Madam President, yesterday I noted with some level of amazement that some speakers from the government bench had been quoting the former Prime Minister, Mr. Manning. I really hope they were doing that with the permission of their current leader, who really exhibits none of the positive attributes associated with the Honorable Mr. Manning. But I thank them for that, because just as the previous speaker, Senator Remy, just said, we need to stop. Because in Mr. Manning's time, it was a different time in politics when you could have disagreed without being disagreeable and still get to some level of consensus. There were opportunities for consensus, Madam President, and I can say so because I sat opposite him. He was in opposition in 2001, and I was one of the three persons who negotiated, me with Mr. Pandey and Ganga Singh, negotiated with Mr. Manning and Ms. Jearlean Williams and Dr. Lenny Seat the handover of the government at the time. And Madam President, what took us through and very likely saved our democracy was the patriotism and grace of the outgoing Prime Minister, Basil Pandey, and the incoming Prime Minister, Mr. Manning. So there can be consensus, but given the kind of environment, the Minister of Public Admin says that the opposition does not support her government's, well, first anti-government and rich will get richer policies. And this will continue so, Madam President, until they actually leave the compound. We cannot support those policies. Madam President, Senator Sagramson, in her reflections on Mr. Manning, said he was interested in ensuring that our social fabric is strong. And I know that to be true. And it was also true of the Prime Minister who succeeded him. We talk about, very glibly, about people not working and not wanting to sacrifice. But again, I think Senator Remy said it, spoke about it. We don't know what people are feeling. People are not asking to get nothing, and I want to associate myself with what she spoke about, the people from Tobago, and for me, particularly the people from Charlottesville, because when the price of fuel goes up by $1 in Port of Spain, it goes up by $5 in Charlottesville. It is pain. Charlottesville people are very hardworking and they are very proud, but they are rural people, just like the people of Mayaro or Toko. They will have it extremely hard. So much so I called my friend from Charlottesville when the price of fuel went up, very hardworking fisherman, Mariddle, and I said, how is this affecting you? And he said, I was getting 3 barrels for $440, and now I'm paying $620. That's a 40% increase. It means that impacts the people of Charlottesville. So I said, have the price of fish has it gone up? He said, no, because I have so much credit outstanding, so much money, the people have so much money outstanding for me. So the policies of the government, they are not pie in the sky, they impact real people. They're not just about balancing a budget. It impacts real people, and that is what we want people, the government, to understand, to balance the social impact on the population, not just to come here and brag and say, well, we can't give you this, eat less macaroni pie. But in Charlottesville, the people cannot buy fish to eat, which is a staple for them to eat, and that, Madam President, is the real issue when we come in here to debate. How does it impact the people of Charlottesville or Mayaro or Toko, as the case might be? Madam President, I paraphrase, not having benefit of the answered Senator Vera, and I am saying I'm loosely paraphrasing, kind of indicated we had it very good here, but good is relative. We are comparing, when he compared Trinidad and Tobago, I think, to what is happening in the UK. The UK is the 5th or 6th largest economy in the world, depending on which data you're looking at. A $3.2 trillion economy, very well diversified, very competitive, global economy. I mean, we are a smaller economy, and we are open to all the shocks that is taking place. And that is why this budget particularly should have been a step, an urgent step, in the right direction in terms of trying, because, I mean, the lights are on, the fire brigade is in the building. You know, we should have been looking. These are not exogenous shocks. These are shocks that are coming that we can't sit down and wait on how the mood Mr. Putin get up in, or whomever. I mean, inflation is out of control, not only here, I agree, across the world. But there are leaders in these countries taking a stand. I mean, this morning, the breaking news when I was getting dressed was that in the U.S., they have raised the price of their social, what we probably do as old age pension. They said what they are giving their retirees, they have raised that contribution by, I think, 8.2%. I'm trying to find my notes on it. Just this morning, they raised it in keeping with inflation because they know that people are under pressure. And they said it's the biggest increase in 40 years.
May I just remind members that I am trying to listen to Senator John. Yes. Please.
Thank you, Madam President. Yes, Madam President. They said it's the largest in 40 years. Why? Because they know that people are under pressure. When this government says, I'm going to give you I've raised fuel and I'm going to give you an extra $1,000, they're doing as if it's a gift to you. This is something we are giving to you. No, people are really suffering. This is something that is really happening, Madam President. And I want the government to be more conscious of what is happening in this country and not just go about this thing very arbitrarily. Again, in the UK, using Senator Vieira's example, they are contemplating it is whether we eat or there is heat. But they, unlike this government, which they use the treasury, they capped the fuel subsidy by $1 billion. So that's at the national level, not at the individual level. In the UK, they capped it at the individual level, where they say for every individual you get about £2,500 pounds worth of subsidy, or they capped it at $2,500 your heating bill, and anything above that the government is going to subsidize. Now, one wonders whether that $1 billion cap that the government has put in place, if it is that the price goes higher than that, what is going to happen? Is it that the fuel price is going to be raised the 8 times, the 9 times, the 10 times? What is going to happen? What is going to happen then if this is insufficient, which it most likely is? So, Madam President, it is not just a question of, we have capped and we are doing well. Doing well is not what the 31 of us in here is saying. Doing well is what the people out there are saying, and they're saying unreasonably they are not doing well. And this is something we have to take into consideration when this budget is being debated, to see if we can ask the government, the Minister of Finance, to change course. Because again, in using the UK example, a couple of weeks ago, the Prime Minister and her new Chancellor, the equivalent of the Minister of Finance, would have lowered the top rate of income tax, the 45% rate. And it was not unlike what is happening here in terms of the disquiet. And what happened? The Prime Minister and her Chancellor, they did something what they said in England, they said they made a U-turn. In Trinidad and Tobago, we'll say they back. But what the Prime Minister said, she said, we get it. We have listened. The abolition of the 45% rate has become a distraction from our mission to get Britain moving. Right? And then she laid out the vision about boosting wages, creating opportunities across the country. Because that is what we have to do. We have to create jobs, boost wages, and so on. And then the Chancellor said, we get it, and we have listened. This government, like stick break in their ears, they don't listen to anybody. And as one commentator describes the government as relentlessly insulting the public, whilst they pose the question, have you heard the comments targeted at citizens in the Parliament? Whenever you think they cannot get worse, they do. And that continues. This arrogant look down and just talking, whatever comes to them out. And that is not good enough. People are not saying they are not willing to sacrifice, but they want to understand, what am I sacrificing for? So basically, the budget is not really a cohesive plan that you could wrap yourself around around, as Dr. Terence Farrell calls it. He said the truth of the matter is we do not have any plan. What we have are bits and pieces of initiative, and that is what it is. He said the time has run out for the energy transition, and now not only do we not have a plan, but need to move post haste to implement that plan, and that is what I think we need to hear. And you can't refer people because they are not hearing it, and they are asking, where is the plan? Yes, the piece of initiative, where does it fit within the plan? So, Madam President, this foreign direct investment that we need so badly, so urgently, I mean, it will not help, we are not getting it because one commentator from the other place said, capital is coward. And what it means is that it goes, as he said, it goes where it is welcomed. So basically, if it is our crime remains out of control, capital will not come to these shores because, as I said, crime is totally out of control, and as Senator Vera described it, the criminals as bloodthirsty monsters. So, Madam President, in the minister's budget statement at page 126, he states, improving service to our citizens and solving serious crime, in particular murders and violent crimes, is central to the mandate of the Trinidad and Tobago Police. But this is not only a matter for the TTPS. To make any dent in crime, there must be an all-of-government approach, an all-of-Trinidad and Tobago approach. There is nothing in this budget which fires up the country to feel hope and optimism and to rally them around the government, because it doesn't matter how high the price and how much we get. If it is, you cannot eat a meal in peace and your home is subject to being invaded, which is happening too often now. You can't be at peace. Just last week, Junior Walker parked up waiting for his wife to buy a meal, and he was killed. People are setting their house on fire with their children inside of it. And it just goes on and on. The sheer brutality, particularly of a 15-year-old that just happened recently. A commentator said, these don't appear to be drug and gang-related killings, but revenge for some stupidness. What can a 15-year-old boy do to deserve this? The fight for drug turf and the gangs established to do it suggests some kind of warped logic. And so these are the things we have to get to. We have to get to the fundamentals. What is causing people to behave the way in which they're behaving? Because, again, never mind how buoyant the economy, if it is our people cannot live in peace and cannot enjoy it, then it really does not matter. Just last week, as you know, Madam President, the U.S. State Department, they gave a warning, a travel advisory to their citizens because they care about their citizens. And they said, do not, on the highest level of the advisory read, level 4, said, don't travel into Port of Spain. Of course, the government of Trinidad and Tobago, instead of trying to get to the root of it, they argue with everybody, as if everybody must be some department of Alizé House. But that is not good enough. It is the truth. People know there is crime, just out of control crime, and never mind what is in the budget. It is not going to work. So again, Madam President, under the heading Sport and Youth, we are ensuring that our youth population, this is what is stated, particularly the age group 15 to 34 years, which account for 25% of the population, that they achieve their full potential and become productive members of society, and to make sure no one anywhere in this country is held back by their circumstances. I think that is what it is. I looked through the investment program, the other books that support this high ideal, which is a good ideal, because too many, again, in another newspaper report, Newsday 9, we saw where 1,771 children are in court for criminal offenses over the last 4 years. And these offenses are, 5 of the most common are possession of ammunition, possession of firearm, robbery with aggravation, shooting with intent. These are young men and women, maybe in the prime, and certainly in the prime of their lives, Madam President. But I'm not saying how are we building the building blocks to ensure that, we start to get at the root of this problem. There is nothing in the government's policy. Coming out of the one shot, one kill, one has not seen where they're saying, okay, fine, that has not worked. So the issue of crime has to shift towards a prevention first policy, because early intervention, Madam President, saves lives and it saves money. You don't have to throw all this money at having more policemen or more boats or what have you. This money money, the opportunity cost, this is where the opportunity cost of the money we have to look at the opportunity cost. That can go into more social programs, more community center, more laptops, more stadiums, more everything else. The money that we are spending to just have maybe a ratio of one policeman to one member of the population. Because, Madam President, everybody knows that talent and energy and enthusiasm and flair, it's all over Trinidad and Tobago. This is not ascribed to one group, but it is the opportunity that is not. And again, using that that UK model, last week I was looking at the leader of the opposition, Sir Keir Starmer, making his presentation to their convention. And he was a former director of public prosecution. And he said early intervention would stop another life that could have gone in a different direction had someone stepped in earlier. He said it's that kind of injustice that must drive us to think differently about our public services, whether it is in health, how moving treatment towards community, in education. It means not just imparting knowledge, but developing creativity, the resilience. These things take work. And in crime, it means a model of policing that can focus on prevention and give victims that faith in the system that their suffering will not go unpunished, and that in a system that will not let violence go unpunished, Madam President. So, Madam President, what the government has to come to terms with is what is the new policy, what is the new sort of work, the operation, what operational are they going to do? Because 21 years old, Madam President, believe that there is nothing to live for and that there is glory in dying young with a gun in your hand. So, Madam President, our problems doesn't end there. As what we are finding out is that the most dangerous person in the world is a young and a lone male, and we are producing just too many of them. Right? Young men who are attached to nothing, not to work, not to home, not to school, not to church, not to communities. They are just adrift. And Madam President, we need to invest in these young men, for them to go to school, for them to get a job, to be responsible. Right? We cannot shoot, Madam President, we cannot shoot our way out of crime. It cannot only be what has been advocated by the U.S. National Rifle Association, the Vice President, Mr. Wayne LaPierre, when he announced during a press conference that the only way to stop a bad guy with a gun is a good guy with a gun. That is not good enough for us. So when Dr. Marlene Natz of UWI said, she's an economist, Madam President, she said COVID-19 showed the soft underbelly of Trinidad and Tobago regarding our vulnerable population. She said there is need to consolidate social protection programs and make targeted efforts to reach the most vulnerable in our society, right? And that is what, again, this is about the vision. How are we, because around all the dollars, all the spreadsheets that came to us in terms of, because what the government said, we are spending more this year than we spent last year on crime. We're spending more this year but then what is the value? What are we getting? Where is the gap analysis? Because in the private sector, you can't just come and deliver a budget. You have to say, you have to do the gap analysis. What did I come to get approved in 2022? And what did I do with what I received? That is a gap analysis. We never got that. As a matter of fact, data is something that we need. Reliable data is something we need so desperately. And I looked at the budget statement of 2021, I think. No, 2020, 2021, 2022, or maybe it was 23, 22, 21, something like that. But the last three, and they were all talking about that same Institute of Statistics, which we don't have up to now. And if it is we don't have that, the National Statistical Institute, how do we know how many of these young men are out there running crazy? How do we know if they want to do agriculture? How do we know how many old people from Charlottesville or wherever in Tobago need to travel on the plane? Or whether they prefer to travel on the boat? We don't know. So what we are doing is not a quantitative, scientific kind of projection. It's qualitative. We don't know what is happening. Why all of these people are falling into gangs and what have you. So, Madam President, we really need that, because I can sit predictably, and I think every first Friday of a succeeding month, by 8 a.m., you get from the U.S. what they call the job report. You just see that coming up. Everybody, when you get up on that morning, the network's talking about that job report. And that job report will tell you how many jobs was created in the U.S., what kind of jobs were created in the U.S., what the jobs paying, who else need jobs, the rate of inflation. It just tells you. So without that, all we are doing here is guessing. And people are just getting to their sweet spot and deciding, I feel I could do this, I could build a hospital or somebody. We don't know for sure. And, Madam President, we are missing the boat and we are missing the point. We need proper, scientific, measurable data that we can use to put into our model so that we can make proper plans and spend our money to get the best value at this time when the government is saying it is very scarce. I can't believe it is scarce if we are not getting this statistical institute going. So, Madam President, in coming back to this crime, in terms of framing a plan for crime, because I think it is the biggest problem we have. It's not money. I mean, we still have dollars. What we need is sense. So last year, just prior to Mr. Boris Johnson leaving his post, he had a speech called Leveling Up. So everybody is concerned. They are all targeting, with a needle gaze on what is needed in their particular community or country. And say, we got to begin by getting the basics right. Everybody, begin with fighting crime, because we will never level up our country while our kids face the misery of dealing with the borderline drug gangs. And this is something, if you leave here and walk to East Port of Spain, Upper Duncan Street can't walk to Lower Duncan Street. That is not natural. And this is not something that we must continue to accept. It's just not natural. And more than that, Madam President, people can lose their life. Somebody and I'm just saying Upper Duncan Street and Lower Duncan Street. I mean, people could lose their life for crossing those borderlines. So these are very serious issues. We may just be talking, but these are serious issues affecting serious people outside. So there, this former Prime Minister was saying, he understood that you have to deal with it. So you get down into the micro people issues. He said, and some kids do not, they can't cross the borderline. And that is why he said we are putting rings of steel around towns that are plagued by these gangs. Something very practical. And steadily driving them out. That is measurable. He's saying steadily driving them out. We don't know. We don't know any money allocated to gangs, to prevention or suppression. How many gangs, we got rid of or what have you, how many communities we would have restored. And then he spoke about recruiting 20,000 policemen. And he said, we'll be ruthless in fighting crime because it is the poorest, Madam President, and most vulnerable who suffer the most. And to give kids alternative to these gangs, we will invest in grassroots sports of all kinds. So that is vision, and hence the reason we really need the vision. The only way things will change, as this change that Senator Remy is calling for, is if there is a vision and people buy into that vision and everyone can rally around that vision. That's the only time things are going to change, Madam President. So, Madam President, which gives us the opportunity to focus on the micro, small, and medium enterprises, because what I think the minister had said in his statement is that these MSMEs, that sector, he said they employ, the minister said, employ women, youth, and groups in vulnerable situations. And if they do that, and you could find these micro, small, medium enterprises in just about every nook and cranny across the country. And here is where, again, focus should come into place, because if they employ women and youths and groups in vulnerable situations, there's where you put your money, But many SMEs are saying, we can't get Forex. And these are folks without any access to really the banking sector. There are no fancy overdraft and so on. There are no friendship with no bank managers, because the banks, of course, are tripping over themselves in declaring supernormal profits. It's not their business to treat with the vulnerable in our community. So some of the measures the government took during COVID exacerbated the problems within the MSME sector, and mainly they have no extensive credit facilities with the banks. Many are unbanked, And that even affected their ability to access the grants during the COVID, because they pay no NIS and all of these things, so they couldn't even access the reliefs, it seems. So, Madam President, it is just pain on top of pain. But they accessed it? Well, somebody stop me? I don't know. Oh, sorry. All right. Madam President, so a vibrant SMME sector is advantageous to the government because these people are mainly self-employed and therefore not a burden on the Treasury. Yet they face many challenges in Trinidad and Tobago, and which brings us to the ease of their doing business. And we have spoken ad nauseum about this ease in 2019. I think it was 105, and that is really far, far away from home, Madam President, when you are 105. And there's a metric that you could follow, and certainly, I mean, I saw them in another place to me making light of it, but these are, the people are facing serious issues, whether with the Register General Department, the Board of Inland Revenue, National Insurance Board, Tongue and Country. What I'm being told is that it's a nightmare to register a business and registering post-incorporation documents. Some of these documents, such as annual returns and beneficial ownership declarations, are needed by the banks to approve financial facilities, such as overdrafts and loans to get loans. And in some instances, because of the lengthy delays in obtaining these documents, the small companies, they get lost, or they probably did not get the approval of the facilities, and it puts severe financial pressure on the business, and in many instances they have had to close their door. They have cash flow issues because the banks are very risk averse, in terms of these kind of businesses coming up to their doors and asking for relief or some kind of credit facilities. These are the things that, to me, the government has to use its influence in looking at and saying, because the government owns banks, in terms of a portion of their business should be written for this sector. It can't just be Netco, which again, I've been told people have to literally jump hoops to access these facilities. I don't think people are not asking for something for nothing. They are just asking for a fair chance. Trinidad people are very entrepreneurial. They'll be a public servant and they have a suitcase in the trunk of the car. They're selling clothes or they're selling some lotion and potion and what have you. Sometimes something they are doing in their own home, etc. People are entrepreneurial and they're willing to, they're selling cakes. So we mustn't count out our population or bet against them. People want to do better. They just want a chance. So, Madam President, the financial sector regulation, especially banks, they are very onerous. So in many instances, to provide the requirements, the SME has to retain a financial professional, and that is costly. So they have to just do it out, because some of the requirements are audited financial statements, projected cash flows, all company incorporated documents, business plans, VAT and tax certificate clearances, and NIB clearances. So they are asking if the government can have serious focused discussions with these banking institutions to encourage them to be receptive to the SME sector, drop or amend some of the requirements needed by these institutions, and treat the sector differently than the large businesses, to provide incentives for businesses to invest and reinvest capital and profits into the economy. And I know they have had the venture capital scheme that is very sluggish, or even our stock exchange, where you have a lot of the family-owned businesses. They are not willing to be listed because they're saying the pre-listing requirements are very onerous. So it might mean 1 by 1 or 2 by 2, as it were, to kind of encourage these businesses to get listed, because then they will find money, a cheaper money anyway, in order they can turn over and create these, hopefully good-paying jobs that we so desperately need, Madam President. The SMEs are asking that maybe seek out government-funded institutions that provide grants and training. They are asking for training and to be able to access whatever facilities that can be accessed to grow and sustain businesses. And contact with the on-the-job training institutions, which can provide trainees which are subsidized by the government. So in exchange, these trainees will get good quality training, which again can be managed and mapped out and standardized by the government. And after, of course, the trainee finishes this stint, based on the initiative and the fact that they're showing up for work, they're excited and interested, the company might very well consider hiring them. Because we really, in weaning yourself off the treasury, you can't just be wean yourself off the treasury, you know. People must have an alternative. I think in Tobago, the THA probably has employs about 75% of the working population. That is unsustainable. That makes no sense, you know. But you know, since I'm growing up in Tobago, in Charlottesville, under every house you have a little parlor, a little something. People are doing something. People are willing to work. All they need is an opportunity. So, Madam President, the government has instituted tax measures that has literally caused businesses to stagnate or even close their doors. One such tax is the business levy liability and the green fund liability. Both of these taxes are taxes on gross sales of a business. And pre-2015, these taxes were 0.2% and 1% respectively. From 2016 to date, these taxes have increased to 6% and 3% respectively. And it's really a financial burden. They say particularly in low-margin businesses such as supermarkets and gas stations. And the increase has caused some businesses even to shut their doors. So they have said many representations have been made from several business associations to address these onerous and unfair taxes, but to date, they have had no favorable response. And you hear about what goes on in the customs, even when as a private citizen, you order something, you pay for it to come via DHL, the little extra, etc. It comes and it sits at the point of entry for 2 weeks. You know, small businesses, they depend. Time is money. They have ordered some little part to fix a washing machine, a television, a computer, as we say in a some kind of little widget stuff, and they need that to turn over the money they have, the capital they have employed. It might look little to some people, but for them, it's the difference between their children eating or maybe them paying their rents or their mortgages. These things are very, very important in terms of looking at these. Sometimes maybe it's just something simple in terms of these annoyance and the issues that cause people not to be able to maximize their effort properly. What AmCham is recommending also is that there's a minimal, what they call a de minimis allowance. So these goods are not subject to the search and the time spent at the border. You see, sometimes when you check up the man hours, the time spent dribbling over it and what have you, it doesn't make sense. You know, what we have to have is the controls at the border to ensure that guns and drugs are not floating in, but certainly a little packet, a little T-shirt or 10 T-shirt people bring in to get painted up for Carnival and so on. You can't keep that there for 2 weeks. Carnival come and go on and they're still waiting on it. I think I heard somebody from the other places saying they bought in some school bags to give out as donations with school supplies. And it came and school opened and they had not gotten it because it was stuck at some point at the border for about 3 weeks. And that really is unconscionable, Madam President. So the micro, small and medium enterprises are an integral part of our economic development. Businesses at that level, they are faced with lack of economies of scale and quality standards to enable such businesses to access export market. So again, it's about grouping maybe to have them scale up, consolidation. And the government continues to preach diversification, but are not putting any effort in place to ensure that the SMEs have a shot at being able to earn foreign exchange. They're talking about the increase in the VAT registration threshold, where you to be registered from 500,000 to 600,000 limit. The comments were VAT is not supposed to be an expense to the registrant. By increasing the limit does not help the registrant, as all purchases by the registrant will be VAT inclusive. And since this business is not registered, he will have to include the input VAT in the cost of the goods, because everything is passed on to the customer, right? And it just results in higher prices. And I've been asked through this House to address with the minister the willingness of the tax authority to register taxpayers below that threshold, and that it's very bureaucratic and inefficient, this registration process. And of course, we have heard about the ongoing challenges with VAT, with the VAT refunds. Madam President, the personal deductions in the fiscal measures, which were increased from $84,000 to $90,000, which gives an additional $6,000 in disposable income in the hands of the taxpayers. This measure affects individuals who are working for $7,500 per month. So the relief is needed at the low end of the working population, but again, maybe it might have been a little more beneficial to raise the minimum wage from $17.50 per hour to $20. This will result in an additional $400 in the pockets of the most vulnerable in the society. One of the other measures was the national insurance pursuing raising the retirement age to 65.
Senator John,
yes.
You have 5 more minutes.
Thank you, Madam President. This has implications to raise that retirement age to 65 has implications for those coming in, because if someone sits down in that job from 60 to 65, it means the younger people at 18 and 20 and so, they are delayed in terms of getting in. So, Madam President, it means all the young graduates from the universities will become disenfranchised and have to wait another 5 years. So, there's just a small group of people, as far as I'm concerned, who support this budget, because it's really about, and maybe it's those who subscribe to the rich getting richer. Right, because for the average income earner, this budget increased the price of gas, diesel, and kerosene by $1 a liter. And of course, this is all passed on to the people, Madam President. So it's very, very difficult for people to make it. It is not that I said they don't want to do better, or they want to just sit back. Madam President, very quickly, there's an issue that is affecting the insurance industry, not unlike what is happening with the banks, and very soon they may be blacklisted. Well, they already because Trinidad and Tobago remain on the blacklist, quite frankly, and Germany has improved, or they have instituted a new law which has a 15% withholding tax. So if there's a disaster, to really cut a long story short, a real disaster, and we are saying with this climate change, etc., the reinsurers are in Germany. Hanover and Munich Re are domiciled in Germany. It means any settlement will have to be net of 15%, and therefore any our local insurers will not be able to settle. So just in this little summarized version, I'm hoping that all of the ministers concerned will be aware of this, and basically they will do something about it, because I've been told that this will move from insurance agencies to the energy company and to the banks. So, Madam President, as economist Dr. Keston Perry summed up this budget perfectly, he said it's a mediocre budget for the rich by a callous government. Right? That is what he said, and he said this is one of the most callous and one of the most neoliberal governments the country has ever seen. So he said he doesn't know what philosophy the government is following. So basically, this budget really should have been jobs, 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 but with the government that we have, what people are saying, it's that it is forward never, backwards ever with this government, Madam President.
Thank